The night I found a password on my husband's phone, I knew my marriage was already over. My husband never locked his phone, not once in 12 years of marriage. It was always there, open, accessible, almost careless, like he had nothing to hide. And I believed him. I believed in us, in the life we had built together. But the night he suddenly turned his screen away from me, just slightly, something inside me shifted. It wasn't obvious, it wasn't dramatic. Just a small movement, the kind most people would ignore. But I didn't. Because when you've known someone for that long, you notice the things they don't say. And later that night, when I picked up his phone like I always did, the screen didn't open. It asked for a password. And in that quiet moment, standing there in the dim light of our living room, I felt something I had never felt before in my marriage. Not anger, not fear, just certainty. Something had already changed, and I just hadn't caught up to it yet. Before that night, my life was predictable in the kind of way people dream about. Stable, comfortable, safe. Daniel and I had built something that looked perfect from the outside. 12 years of marriage, a beautiful home, a routine that rarely changed. He left for work at the same time every morning, came back at the same time every evening. We ate dinner together, talked about our day, laughed about small things that didn't really matter. And through all of it, there was trust. Or at least, what I believed was trust. His phone was never an issue. It was always unlocked, always within reach. Not because I needed to check, but because there was never a reason to. That's the thing about trust. You don't realize how much you rely on it until it starts to crack. At first, I tried to ignore it. A password doesn't mean anything, right? People change. Habits evolve. Maybe it was work. Maybe someone had told him to be more careful. That's what I told myself, over and over again. But something about the way he acted didn't match that explanation. It wasn't just the password. It was the way he started holding his phone closer. The way he tilted the screen away when messages came in. The way he became slightly more aware of where I was. Like he was adjusting, calculating, without saying a word. And the strange part? He never acted guilty. He didn't avoid me. He didn't distance himself. If anything, he seemed normal, and that's what made it harder. Because when nothing looks wrong, you start questioning yourself instead. Days turned into a week, and that quiet feeling inside me didn't go away. It grew, slowly, subtly, like something sitting just beneath the surface, waiting to be noticed. I started paying attention to things I had never cared about before. The timing of his calls, the way he smiled at his phone, but not at me. The way he stepped out of the room to respond to messages that used to come freely in front of me. None of it was enough to accuse him of anything. None of it was proof. But it was different. And sometimes, different is enough to change everything. Because once doubt enters your mind, it doesn't leave quietly. It stays. It lingers. And it starts connecting pieces you didn't even know were there. I didn't want to be suspicious. I didn't want to become the kind of woman who checks phones, who reads into every silence, who questions every look. That wasn't who I was. That had never been my story. But something inside me refused to settle. It was like a quiet voice, constantly reminding me that something wasn't right. And no matter how much I tried to ignore it, it kept coming back, louder each time. So I started watching, without meaning to, waiting, without planning to, looking for something I couldn't even define. Because deep down, I wasn't trying to catch him in a lie. I was trying to prove to myself that I was wrong. If you've ever had that feeling where everything looks normal, but something just doesn't feel right, then you understand exactly where this is going. And if you're still here, watching this story unfold, take a moment to subscribe, because sometimes the truth doesn't come all at once. Sometimes it reveals itself slowly. It happened about 10 days later. Nothing dramatic, no argument, no confrontation. Just a normal evening. Dinner, conversation, silence. And then he stepped outside to take a call. He didn't take his phone with him. At least, not immediately. He left it on the table, face down. And for a moment, I just stared at it. My heart started beating faster. Not because I had decided to do anything, but because something inside me already had. I told myself to leave it alone, to respect his privacy, to trust him. But trust doesn't survive uncertainty. Not for long. And before I could stop myself, my hand reached for the phone. My fingers hovered over the screen for a few seconds, frozen between fear and truth. I could still hear his voice faintly from outside, calm, normal, like nothing in our lives had changed. And for a second, I almost dropped the phone, almost walked away. Because sometimes, not knowing feels safer than knowing. But something inside me refused to let go. I tapped the screen again. Password. 4 digits. Simple. Familiar. I stared at the keypad, trying to remember anything. Birthdays, anniversaries, numbers that meant something to him. My hands were shaking as I tried the first combination. Wrong. Then another. Wrong again. My heart started racing faster. I knew I didn't have much time. And then, I paused. Thought about something I hadn't considered before. Not his birthday, not mine, but someone else's. My younger sister's birthday. I don't know why it came to my mind. Maybe instinct. Maybe something deeper. But my fingers moved before I could question it. I entered the numbers slowly, almost afraid of what would happen if it worked. And then, the screen unlocked. Just like that. No hesitation, no delay, and in that exact moment, something inside me dropped. Not broke, not shattered, just dropped. Because that wasn't random. That wasn't coincidence. That was deliberate. And I knew, without opening a single message, that whatever I was about to see was going to change everything. I opened his messages first. My hands were trembling so badly, I had to steady the phone with both hands. Conversations filled the screen. Names I didn't recognize. Messages that meant nothing to me. But I wasn't looking for everything. I was looking for something specific. On something that would either prove I was overthinking or confirm the fear I hadn't been able to say out loud. And then I saw it. A contact saved under a name that didn't belong. Just one word. Simple. Unassuming. But something about it felt wrong. I clicked it slowly. And as the messages loaded, my breathing stopped. At first, it didn't make sense. The messages were casual, familiar, comfortable, the kind of conversations you have with someone you've known for a long time. Jokes, memories, small talk that didn't seem suspicious on the surface. But then, the tone shifted, subtly, almost unnoticed. Words became softer, more personal, more intimate. And then I saw it. A message that didn't belong in any normal conversation. I miss you. It's harder when she's around. My chest tightened instantly. My eyes scanned the screen again, hoping I had read it wrong. But I hadn't. And suddenly, everything started falling into place in a way I didn't want it to. I scrolled further, faster now, ignoring the way my hands were shaking. And then I saw her name. Not hidden. Not disguised anymore. Just sitting there, clear as day. Emily, my sister, my own blood. My breath caught in my throat as I stared at the screen. Unable to process what I was seeing. Messages between them, not just recent, but months back. Conversations that went deeper than they ever should have. Plans, meetings, moments they had shared behind my back, while standing right in front of me. I kept scrolling, even though every message felt like a knife, because part of me still hoped there would be something, anything, that explained it differently. But there wasn't. There was no misunderstanding, no confusion. Yeah, just truth. Clear, undeniable, and completely devastating. I don't remember when I sat down, but suddenly I was on the floor, the phone still in my hand, my entire body numb. Betrayal doesn't feel like anger at first. It feels like disbelief, like your mind is trying to protect you from something it knows you can't handle. I kept reading, even though I didn't want to, even though I knew it would only hurt more. She trusts us. We just have to be careful. Soon, things will be different. Different? Different how? I was right there, living in the same house, loving the same man, trusting the same sister. And somehow, I had become invisible in my own life, in my own marriage, in my own family. If you're still watching this, then you understand how deep this kind of betrayal cuts. Because this isn't just about a relationship, it's about trust. And once that's broken, nothing is ever the same again. So if stories like this keep you hooked, don't forget to subscribe, because sometimes the people closest to us are the ones we never see coming. I didn't confront him that night. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't wake him up and demand answers. I just placed the phone back exactly where I found it and laid down beside him, staring into the darkness. Because once you know the truth, reacting too quickly can cost you everything. And I needed more than just proof. I needed understanding. I needed to know how deep this went, how long it had been happening, and most importantly, I needed to know who they really were. When I wasn't looking, morning came, and everything looked the same. The house, the routine. I'm the man lying beside me. But nothing felt the same anymore. Because once you see people for who they really are, you can't unsee it. He smiled at me like he always did, kissed my forehead, asked about breakfast, and for the first time, I saw him clearly. Not as my husband, but as someone I didn't recognize. Someone who had been living a second life, right in front of me. And then there was her, my sister. The one person I trusted beyond everything else. The one person who knew me completely, and still chose to betray me anyway. And in that moment, I made a decision. Not to confront them. Not yet. Because what I was about to do next, they would never see coming. I didn't cry that morning. I didn't ask questions. I didn't even look at him differently. At least not in a way he could notice. Instead, I did something far more dangerous, and I stayed calm. Because the moment you react, you lose control. And control was the only thing I had left. I watched him move around the house like everything was normal. Like the life we had built wasn't already falling apart. And I played along. I smiled when he spoke. I nodded when he asked questions. I responded like the version of me he was used to. But inside, something had already changed. I wasn't trying to fix my marriage anymore. I wasn't trying to understand him. I was trying to understand the truth. Fully. Completely. Without interruption. Over the next few days, I became someone I didn't recognize. Not paranoid, not desperate. Just aware. I noticed everything. The way he checked his phone first thing in the morning. The way he stepped outside more often. The way he smiled. But only when he wasn't looking at me. And then there were the small things. The details that used to mean nothing but now meant everything. The slight pause before he answered certain questions. The way he avoided mentioning my sister's name. The way his tone shifted whenever she called. It was subtle, careful, almost perfect. but not perfect enough. Because when you know the truth, even the smallest inconsistency becomes loud. And then there was Emily, my sister, the one person I had never imagined I would have to watch this way. She still called me, still checked in, still spoke with the same warmth, the same familiarity, the same voice I had trusted my entire life. And that was the hardest part. Because nothing about her sounded different. Nothing about her seemed guilty. If anything, she sounded normal. And that's what made it worse. Because betrayal doesn't always come with distance. Sometimes, it comes with closeness, with comfort, with the same voice that once made you feel safe. And every time I spoke to her, I felt like I was talking to a stranger wearing my sister's face. If you've ever had someone smile in your face while hiding something behind your back, then you already know how confusing this feels. And if this story is pulling you in, make sure you're subscribed, because what comes next is where everything changes. I didn't rush. That was the key. Because rushing leads to mistakes, and I couldn't afford that. I waited, watched, and when the opportunity came again, I took it. His phone, same place, same carelessness, same mistake. This time, I wasn't shaking, I wasn't hesitating. I unlocked it smoothly, like I had done it 100 times before, and I went straight to their messages. No searching, no guessing, just truth. I scrolled further back this time, past the recent conversations, past the casual messages, deeper into the beginning of something I didn't even know existed. And that's when I saw it. The first message. The start of everything. And it didn't begin recently. It started months ago, during a time when I thought everything in my life was perfectly fine. It started innocently. Or at least, that's how it looked. Conversations about family, about me, about small things that didn't seem important. But slowly, over time, the tone changed, the lines blurred, the boundaries disappeared. Jokes became personal. Conversations became private. And then, it crossed a line it never should have crossed. I didn't expect to feel this way. That was the message. Simple, quiet, but powerful enough to change everything. Because feelings don't appear overnight. They grow, slowly, quietly, just like secrets. And reading those messages, I realized something that hurt more than anything else. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't sudden. This was something they had both allowed to happen, step by step, choice by choice. I kept reading, even though every word felt heavier than the last. They talked about me. Like I wasn't even part of their reality, like I was just there, existing, unaware. She trusts me. She has no idea. Those words stayed with me, not because they were shocking, but because they were true. I had trusted them, completely, without hesitation, without doubt, and they knew that. They used that. And somehow, that hurt more than the betrayal itself, because it wasn't just about what they did. It was about how easily they did it, how comfortable they were, knowing I would never suspect them. That's when something inside me shifted again. Not pain, not confusion, clarity, pure, sharp clarity. Because I finally understood something I hadn't been able to accept before. I wasn't going to get the truth from them, not willingly, not honestly, because people who can lie that easily don't suddenly start telling the truth. And confronting them without a plan would only give them a chance to hide more, to twist things, to make me question myself all over again. And I wasn't going to let that happen. Not this time. So instead of reacting, I decided to do something else. Something they would never expect. I invited them both over. Same day. Same time. No warning. No explanation. Just a simple message. Casual, normal, nothing suspicious. And they both agreed. Of course they did. Why wouldn't they? To them, everything was still under control. Everything was still hidden. And that was exactly what I needed. Because the truth is, people are most vulnerable when they believe they're safe. And that night, they were going to feel safe. Right up until the moment they realized they weren't. Because what I had prepared wasn't just a confrontation. It was the truth, laid out in a way they couldn't deny. That evening, I prepared everything carefully. Not dramatically, not aggressively, just precisely. Dinner was ready. The house was clean. The atmosphere felt normal. Calm. Almost peaceful. The kind of setting no one would question. Because that's the thing about truth. It doesn't always arrive with chaos. And sometimes, it walks into a quiet room and changes everything without raising its voice. Daniel came home first. Same routine, same smile, same questions. And I responded the same way I always had. No tension, no suspicion, just normal. And then, a few minutes later, Emily walked in, my sister, smiling, comfortable, completely unaware that this would be the last time we would ever sit in a room like this again. We sat together like we had done so many times before, talking, eating, laughing, or at least pretending to. If anyone had walked into that room, they would have seen a perfect picture. A husband, a wife, a sister. Nothing out of place, nothing suspicious. And maybe that's what made it so powerful. Because beneath that calm surface was something neither of them were prepared for. I watched them carefully. The way they avoided eye contact for just a second too long. The way their conversations overlapped awkwardly. The way their comfort felt slightly forced. And for the first time, I wasn't confused anymore. I wasn't doubting myself. I wasn't searching for answers. I already had them. It happened in the simplest way possible. No shouting, no accusations, just one sentence. Calm, direct, clear. I know. That was it. 2 words, and everything in that room changed instantly. Daniel froze. Emily's smile disappeared before she could even process it. Silence filled the space between us. Heavy, suffocating, undeniable. And for a moment, no one spoke. Because when the truth is finally exposed, words become unnecessary. They looked at me, waiting for more, waiting for me to explain, to question, to break. But I didn't. I just reached for my phone and placed it on the table. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't rush. I simply played it. The screenshots. The messages. Every word they thought I would never see. Every conversation they believed was hidden. It was all there, laid out clearly, with no room for denial. I watched their faces as the truth unfolded in front of them. Not through accusations, but through their own words. Daniel couldn't look at me. Emily couldn't look at him. And in that moment, everything they had built in secret collapsed in silence. Because the truth doesn't need to shout, it just needs to be seen. The excuses came quickly after that. Broken. Incomplete. Desperate. Daniel tried to explain, tried to make it sound like something that had just happened, like it didn't mean anything, like it wasn't what it looked like. I and Emily. She cried, not for me, not for what she had done, but for herself, for being caught, for losing control of something she thought she had hidden perfectly. And that was when I realized something that hurt more than anything else. They weren't sorry because they betrayed me. They were sorry because they couldn't hide it anymore. I didn't argue with them. I didn't ask questions. Because there was nothing left to understand. No explanation could fix what had already been broken. No apology could erase what had already happened. So I stood up, looked at both of them. And for the first time since all of this began, I allowed myself to feel it. Not anger. Not sadness. Just release. Because sometimes, the moment you stop holding everything in is the moment you finally let it go. And in that moment, I wasn't losing anything, and I was finally seeing everything clearly. I asked them both to leave. Not dramatically, not emotionally, just calmly. And they did, without argument, without resistance, because deep down, they knew there was nothing left to fight for. And as the door closed behind them, I stood there in the silence of a house that suddenly felt unfamiliar, but also free. Because for the first time in months, maybe even years, I wasn't living in a lie anymore. The truth had hurt, more than I could have imagined. But it had also done something else. It had given me back myself. I used to believe that betrayal came from strangers, from people who didn't like you, people you could see coming. But I was wrong. Betrayal comes from the people you trust the most, the ones you let into your life without hesitation, the ones who know exactly how to hurt you, because you showed them how. But here's what I learned. Something I wish I understood sooner. Being betrayed doesn't make you weak. It means you were real. It means you loved honestly. And losing people like that isn't a loss. It's clarity, painful, but necessary. Because sometimes, the only way to find yourself again is to lose the people who were never truly with you. If this story made you feel something, if it kept you watching, if it reminded you of something you've experienced or feared, then subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done in my position?